right, welcome back to another episode of the Agendas podcast. I'm your host Harry here with Ben.
Hey, how we doing?
We're doing good. We're just going to give a quick little episode, even shorter than the last one, just a quick recap of Game Two. Not too much additional to say, so it's going to be a quicker one. But did want to talk about it. So the Celtics take a commanding 2-0 lead against Dallas, taking care of home court advantage. There's a famous saying: the series doesn't start until the home team loses. I don't believe that. But it looked pretty dominant at times. And then I know there was a moment in the fourth quarter where I think Derek White hit like a three and was like, okay, yeah, this game is over. And then Dallas made it like a 5 point game with like a minute left still. So Dallas always has that like run in them, but they just haven't been able to put it together. Kyrie with another terrible game. Luka started out really hot. I guess to start from the Mavericks point of view, just to organize things a little bit. Luka started out really hot, but I think he had 20 points within the first quarter and like a little bit. And even at that time, if you're a Celtics fan or like me and Ben, who picked the Celtics in five, you still felt pretty confident because even when Luka was cooking like that, it was like a 5, 6 point game, right? So it never felt like that Mavs are in control. And like we always talk about, it's a game of runs. So if that was going to be the Luka run, and they're going to be up 5 points, like you felt pretty confident. And then by halftime already, I think the Celtics had the lead, and they kind of stormed away with it. And the Celtics didn't even shoot well from three. They shot pretty bad. I think it was like 20% in the 20% range. So if they're going to win the game where Luka plays great, I don't say great, but offensively he had a really good game outside of the turnovers, and they're not going to shoot the three ball well. I think Dallas has to feel really good. I mean, Boston has to feel really good. Again, Luka had 20 points in like the first 15 minutes or so, and then after that kind of died down. The turnovers were killer. He had 8 turnovers. He missed a couple of free throws that he talked about after the game. And I've seen some people talk about like this was some A+ Luka game. I don't see that at all. I thought he was okay. If I had to grade it, it would probably be like a B+, just because he did have the scoring spurt early, but the 8 turnovers is too many, and he kind of slowed down in the second half. Kyrie's been terrible. We kind of predicted that the Boston just has a really good defense. In terms of players who they can throw at Kyrie. So he's really struggled, even more so than I thought. But if Dallas is going to have any hope in this series going back home, Kyrie's going to have to be much better, and the role players are going to have to be much better, which is not crazy because the role players do tend to play better at home. PJ Washington, I think he had 17, but he hasn't had that same impact. He was hitting those big threes earlier in the playoffs, and Derek Jones Jr. has kind of been a no-show. And outside of Luke and Kyrie, kind of what we talked about, why we had Celtics in five, they just don't have enough offense outside of that. So, going back home, they're going to need the role players to step up. They're going to need a better Kyrie game, and I think they're going to need an A to an A+ Luka game. If they're going to win Game 3, because if they lose Game 3, it's going to be over. But Game 3 is their opportunity to make it a series, come back home. The crowd's going to be going crazy. The first finals game in Dallas since 2011. But Ben, do you have any major takeaways from the Dallas side of things from this game?
Yeah, I mean, Luka really was dominating to open the game. Wasn't missing a shot. Ultimately forced Boston to do some doubling. And that opened up Dallas's offense a little bit more, where you saw at least a couple dunks, a couple lob passes. So that's where it can get scary. Is if Luke, I mean, he's super slowed down, right? But if he can force Boston to start doubling him, that's when they can start to get into some offense, and that's kind of what they've been doing throughout the playoffs. But for the most part, to me, it felt like this felt like a much more normal game. It felt like at times Dallas stagnated Boston at some like Dallas had their moments where they played better than Boston, and Boston got stuck for a little bit offensively, and Dallas was so I mean, ultimately, it felt like Dallas was playing catch up the whole time, and they just felt like they were behind the whole time. That's kind of what it feels like to me. It feels to me like Celtics in four. I mean, that's overreacting. But listen, Dallas gets a win in game three, and then there's a lot of pressure on Boston in game four. So, otherwise they've blown their 2-0 lead, and everyone thought they were dominating. So I don't see that happening, but a Dallas win in Game 3, I think, puts a lot of pressure on Boston in Game 4 is really my only concern for Boston at this point.
Yeah, we had this series, the finals, a couple years back where the Suns were up 2-0, and it was a similar type of thing where the Suns won, I don't remember, it was like 60+ games or 58+ games, whatever it was. They had a great regular season, and they're up 2-0 in the finals, and I was like, okay, this series is over. And then, the Bucks were able to come back home and kind of take that back over. Again, I think game three is huge. It's an opportunity for Dallas to put pressure back on Boston. It's more than just one game, in my opinion. Like if Boston wins game three, the series is over. They're not coming back from 3-0. Um, so yeah, in terms of that, the other thing I wanted to mention is like the Luka injury. Can we stop, bro? They threw out this thing like he was questionable. He what was it? He moved down from probable to questionable before the game, and then he played. So it was like, shut up, bro. Like what was the point of that? Like everyone knew he was gonna play, right? And I didn't hear any injuries in the Minnesota series when they won in 5 games. Zero. We heard early in the playoffs, right, when he was struggling. Then he starts to play well against Minnesota. Now no injuries, and now like they're down to one, and now there's injuries. Just stop it, bro. No one cares. Zero injury excuse from my point of view, and that's that. But let's move on to Boston a little bit. And for Boston to win this game, I mean they were down early a little bit. Again, not too crazy, like 5 or 6 points, but early on it looked like Luka maybe goes for that 50, 60 points, and they kind of contain that. Just because their defensive personnel is too good. I don't think Luka's going to get a 50, 60 point game. I might live to regret that. We'll see. But in terms of the players that can throw at him, Tatum, Brown, Porzingis at the rim, they have Holiday, White in the guard. Their defensive personnel is too good to let Luka go for that many points. So when they kind of were able to slow down Luka, and I think in the fourth quarter Luka was 0 for 4, right? So I think he maybe hit a free throw or two, but they kind of shut him down in the second half, and he did have those 8 turnovers. So even though this was, technically he had like 31, 11, 11, like, oh, that's a great Luka game. But if you're going to be able to force 8 turnovers and shut him down in the second half, Boston can live with that. Um, I thought they played really well defensively. Jason Tatum was pretty meh, honestly. He was actually pretty bad in terms of his shooting. He just, he wasn't making shots. And they tried to play it off as like Jason Tatum was like so unselfish. They like asked him about it because he had a bunch of assists and he didn't score that much. They're like, Jason, how does it feel to like be a part of the team and like show that you're more than a scorer? And he's like, yeah, it's just about being unselfish. Like, bro, shut up. You literally took like I think it was 7 more shots than everybody else on the team, and you just missed them, right? So that's not unselfish. You just missed your shots. He did get a bunch of assists. He has grown in that aspect in his career where he can affect the game in more than one way. Jrue Holiday was phenomenal in game two. I think he had 26 points. He's been huge the whole playoffs, much better than he was in Boston in the playoffs. I wonder why that is. We'll talk about that a different day. But yeah, no one really had it outside of Jrue Holiday. Brown was pretty meh. Tatum was pretty bad in terms of shooting. Porzingis was meh. Like they didn't have anyone really pop off, and they shot the three ball bad. It didn't feel like they were playing great offensively outside of that stretch where I think it was back to back threes to go up like 12 with like 3 minutes left. Then it was like, okay, they're starting to click. But I think Dallas should be scared because Boston hasn't even had the 3 point shooting game. I think game one they shot 39%, but that's what they average pretty much, right? So there's a chance that in game three, Boston just shoots 45% from three and the game is over. So I think Boston should feel very confident. Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add and talk about in terms of the Boston Celtics side of things?
Yeah, just touching on what you said, they've got all those different weapons offensively that can step up at any point. It was Porzingis in game one. Porzingis was pretty much a no-show in this game, but then you got the Jrue Holiday game. So yeah, they've just got too many guys that like two of them, any two have to come in on a night, and none of them are consistent enough that they're A-plus players. They're going to come on every night, but 2 out of 4 are going to come. We just don't know which ones, and so that's kind of the problem with Boston. Yeah, Jason Tatum was a garbage can. Really on both ends of the floor. Like watching the game, meaning late in the game was a little different, but through the first 3 quarters, he was getting cooked by Luka. Like we kind of are like, oh, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown defensively in the pick and roll. Like, okay, make a switch and we'll take the other one. Doesn't matter. Jason Tatum was getting cooked by Luka, at least in that early stretch. Jaylen Brown to me is clearly their best defender for Luka over these past 2 games. But he can't do that every play and be the offensive engine. Like it's no player does that, and so they're going to have to balance or be careful with when they pick and choose to have him be the one guarding Luka, in my opinion. And then just the other thing is Boston offensively. This game, they were much less aggressive. I know this has been my thing, but they were much less aggressive targeting Luka. The first half, they basically didn't do it. Like, I was keeping track of it. They had 5 possessions the whole first half that they went against Luka. And then 2 minutes to go in the half, they did all their last 5 possessions. They decided to target Luka. So it felt like for whatever reason, like at that, it felt like they decided, okay, we're targeting Luka for the rest of the half, but they didn't do it the whole time. In the second half, they were a little more aggressive doing it, somewhere in between. So I don't know what their thought process is there. But I'm on team. Let's get this guy in the pick and roll, not only for the defense, but also because offensively, it makes him tired as well. But besides that, even without targeting him, Luka wasn't on the ball every possession. In the first half, I mean, he scored a ton of points, but to open the game, Dallas was trying to get other guys on the ball and doing things and whatever. Well, we'll see if that's ever successful for them. I kind of went all over the place there, but um, yeah.
Yeah, I apologize if you heard that motorcycle in the background. I'm kind of by a window, so it is what it is. Yeah, nothing too much to add there. I think let's do a quick game three preview and then we'll head out. Again, it's going to be a really short podcast this time. Just a quick in and out. Dallas is favored in game three, which might be a little surprising. I think they're favored by 1.5. And I guess it's not too crazy because even if even if Dallas is going to lose in let's say 5 games like we predicted, if you had to pick a game for them to win, it was going to be game three, right? That's just the natural. You come back home, the crowd's going crazy. They haven't played in the finals in forever. They're going to be behind Luka. The role players play better at home, so I wouldn't be shocked, right? We did pick in 5 games, and I don't think Dallas is going to get swept. I see them stealing a game. So if it was going to be the game, maybe it's this game. But if you made me pick who's going to win, I would say Boston. I think Boston has that 3-point shooting barrage in game three, and then I think Dallas comes back and wins game four, and then Boston closes it out at home. I just think the shooting is going to hit the midpoint at a certain point where they're just going to hit too many threes. And Kyrie, I don't see him. At home I think he'll be a little bit better, but again, Drew Holiday, Derek White, they're just too good defensively on ball. Getting up in his face, not letting him get space, turning him over, etc. And we'll see if Porzingis maybe has a bounce back game. But Ben, what do you see happening in game three?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Boston as well. The Dallas really hasn't shown me anything to indicate that they're gonna run away with the game, um, or even really be able to keep it competitive. I think Boston has really done a good job being disciplined in terms of okay with Luka scoring a high percentage of his buckets, and we're not going to over double and let other guys get involved. So I trust them even in a road environment where they're still going to be disciplined in how they play defensively, and make it Luka or bust. And I think they've also shown discipline in terms of when Dallas does go on runs, they've been able to respond to that. And so just those two disciplines, I know Boston people question Boston a lot in that area, but to me they've shown enough. And without that question mark, they're just more talented. And so I'm going to pick them to win Game 3.
Yeah, sounds good. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and YouTube at the Agendas Pod. Give us a follow if you're listening on Spotify. We're probably not going to do another podcast until after game four, at least, if the series is over then. If not, maybe game five. We'll have to see how it goes, how the series is looking from there. Maybe Dallas, takes back-to-back games, and it's a 2-2 series going back to Boston. You never know. But that's going to do it for us. Quick little podcast, and see you guys in the next one.